What is alternative investments for people that have no idea what that means?
It's everything that's not traditional investments. Like, there's no good answer to that question. The universe of alternative investments is more vast than traditional. So if it is stocks and bonds, and you can buy it in public markets, it's not alternative. If it is stocks and bonds and you're long short, and you're using derivatives and things of that nature, then it becomes alternative. If you're doing private equity, private credit, if you're investing in physical real estate, not REITs, that is alternative. If you are doing music rights, if you are doing any sort of venture capital, if you are investing in wine, if you are investing in sports teams, if you are investing in baseball cards, there's funds for that. You can invest in a whole lot of stuff. Anything that is not buying stocks or buying bonds, only those two things in public markets is considered alternative investments.
That makes sense. And for what's the trend of alts, I feel like over the last 2 years have become increasingly popular. Advisors,
because it worked.
Yeah. Because I was going to ask, with that, it works. How do returns look compared relative to an S&P 500? Certain alts, because I know it's a broad.
It's a massive universe. Yeah. So here's the difference. They don't always behave the same as those other types of investments, the more traditional investments. That's actually the benefit they bring to the table. The reason why you're hearing about them more in the last 2 years is because alternative investment strategies broadly did better than traditional markets. Even the ETF and mutual funds that are the least efficient way to gain access to this space broadly outperformed. So, the goal when you're investing, and I heard somebody say this once, and I thought this was brilliant, is that we talk about investing versus a benchmark, right? We never talk about it as like goals based, right? So like, you should be investing on a hurdle rate and not like, this is what the S&P returned. Like, this is what I'm saving for. This is what I'm using this money for. What is the rate of return I need to receive to be able to achieve X goal? What is the smoothest ride for me to get there, right? So I don't care if the S&P is up 30%. If that's gravy, right? If all you need is a 10% hurdle. So I like the idea of investing with a hurdle rate in mind and not focusing on a relative benchmark. I think that's brilliant. But the benefit of investing in alternatives is it smooths out the ride because they tend to behave differently than traditional markets. And there's a lot of reasons why, and probably not going to get into the weeds on that, but they can smooth out the ride. But also public markets tend to be more efficient, right? Because all the information's out there. And there's regulatory functions and companies have to report certain things. And so there is no information advantage necessarily in the public markets. I mean, there can be, but it's minor. And it really becomes just a difference of opinion at that point. In the private markets, there's a lot less efficiency because you don't have constant market action to provide you transparency on value. So it really does become more about skill, but it also gives you greater opportunity to do better than the public markets, right? Because you can have an information advantage. You can have, in the case of private equity, you can have just a scale advantage. Like if a company has a lot of money and is taking other companies private and then using resources that they have internally to make them better, more profitable companies, and then spinning them out and making money off that, that is the real opportunity. Venture capital is the same way. It's, trying to figure out who's going to be the next successful business and placing your bets like they're horses. And then you just get a feel sometimes for, who can be successful or not. And more times than not, most of what you bet on is not going to win. But you don't need that because the people who win can, make up for everybody that lost. And for that reason, alternative investments can be extremely lucrative. But there's some limitations, like,
liquidity.
Liquidity is the main one, right? Like, so I actually think every single person should be comfortable putting 10% in something illiquid. I mean, if you have a CD, right, at the bank, you're somewhat illiquid, right? Because if you try to take it out early, you're going to have a penalty. You kind of have to approach private markets the same way. You might not have a willing buyer on the other side. It might take you a little bit of time. But more times than not, you'll be able to find somebody in a secondary if you really needed liquidity. But you're going to take a haircut on it, just like you would if you had a CD at the bank. But I think that every single person should feel comfortable putting 5 to 10% of their portfolio something illiquid. If the worst case scenario in the world happened, 90% of your portfolio is completely liquid and you could liquidate it and you could have the time to liquidate the rest of it. So yeah, I think that there's benefits to doing that. You can invest more with things that you have passion for, and you can be more excited about what you're doing and how you are investing your money. And private markets, alternative investments really allow you to do that. So I think everybody should consider this. You get way more excited about it. But the opportunities for better returns than the traditional markets are substantial.